Elijah, man. Nice to meet you, bro.
Yeah, for real. I know you're on the podcast with you just had that one-on-one with Kwame, but this is the
Yeah, yeah,
first time we've actually got to meet.
yeah. Well, if you want, we can start there. I got a couple questions for you. Just I want to kind of get actually, you know what? Let me get to know you a little bit first, and then we'll talk about the podcast.
Okay.
But tell me a little bit just about your background, your story, um, what part of town you're from, and just yeah, I guess how you when you started first getting into uh, this lovely game of ours.
Yeah, so my mom's from England, my dad's from Trinidad. Um, no one in my family really played too much hockey. I don't know, you might know my cousin, Austin Cordado.
I know the name.
He,
Yeah.
yeah, he played for Kingston, Halifax, Guelph, a little bit. I don't know if I believe he's an 86 or 87. So
Yeah.
around you're an
Yeah.
86,
I'm
right?
big. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was the only one in my family that played hockey, and after just watching him a little bit, I started to get involved in the game. And at first, I wasn't too good. I could skate really fast, but couldn't stop and turn. And my dad and mom have always just been stay persistent, keep working hard, and then eventually, I just started to get a little bit better at it. And over time, I started to fall in love with it more and more. And um, yeah, went and played with Brampton for a little bit, then the Reps, then the Marlies. Then obviously got drafted by Kitchener. Played 2 years there, loved it there. And then got traded to Niagara, and that's where I finished my career. And now I'm over at Ryerson.
Yeah. What's it like right now? Obviously, you're not playing at Ryerson, but what's that experience been like in your freshman season, and then hockey kind of gets taken away, and there's so much that's happening, and I don't know, it's kind of crazy times right now.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of the weirdest years of my life. It's probably for a lot of people. I
Yeah.
mean, for the last I don't know how many years I've been playing hockey, pretty much throughout the year, whether it's training in the summer, actual games in the winter. Always been on the ice, and this is the first time where it's like there's nothing, there's no training, there's
Mhm.
no games. So, and then even going into a new team, you're expecting to kind of get a fresh start, maybe have a big year, maybe get a job in Europe or the NHL or pro somewhere
Yeah.
out of here, and then for that to kind of be taken away, and then going on top of that, going into next season, there's going to be a whole new recruiting class going in with us.
Cohort. Yeah.
That'll just make the competition that much harder. But the schooling part has been very good. Ryerson's been pretty good with making sure that we're all comfortable. We all have academic mentors in our first year,
Nice.
so getting through classes, it's been pretty easy. It's been easier than I thought. I figured handling 4 or 5 classes at a time would be hell, but no, it's been pretty good. I've done pretty good in my classes so far, and I'm
Awesome.
enjoying it.
That's good to hear. Yeah, you're totally right about. I mean, this is you're still a young guy, obviously, but this has definitely got to be one of the strangest years. And I just retired at the end of March. I was playing in Germany my last year, and I'm actually really grateful that I'm not playing right now, given the pandemic and everything, just because I couldn't, as hockey players, like as athletes, we're so regimented, we always have, like you said, whether it's off season or in season, you always kind of know what you're going to be doing. You always have your routine, you have your schedule. We're very militant and disciplined and staying towards that. And then that just kind of stops. And that would be that's a weird kind of mental. It's not just on our physical side, which is so much of what we do, but on the mental side, it's like, what do I do now? Everything's just put on hold. So and you keep trying to work towards something, but you don't exactly maybe know when the kickoff point's going to come. So
Mhm.
yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, again, for the mental side of that, that's like why I'm happy. I didn't want to be in a position still playing, but like fighting for a job, or, I didn't want like my body to be the one telling me I had to shut down, or not being able to get a job, and obviously the pandemic has hurt positions in sports
Yeah,
so much
you
more.
want control of whatever
Exactly.
time to call it.
Exactly. So I'm happy I could roll out on my own and not have to worry about that. It's funny when you talk about your cousin and like having him be, the only one you kind of, I guess, like in your family who's a hockey based athlete or just interested in the game. So my mom's from Canada. She's a mix of British, Irish, Scottish, and my dad's Jamaican. And so say my dad came over, he was well, in the 70s, he was an Olympic athlete. He was an Olympic sprinter for Canada. He was for 10 years, actually. He was Canada's fastest man.
Wow.
So always had the kind of, he was drafted to the Argos in 77. So always, I mean, he was a very good athlete.
Just
My brother and I grew up
okay.
playing, my bro and I, we grew up playing everything. But I think for myself, like being a Canadian kid, you know, hockey was always kind of normal, like to have an interest in. All your friends do it. You know, you play foot hockey in the playground with the tennis ball. You play tennis sticks. You play road hockey. You play ice hockey. You play whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And you play it on your video games. You watch it. You're trading cards. But I think for the same way you had your cousin, like we weren't. My mom grew up playing hockey as a Canadian girl, but for me, again, it was I looked up to my brother. And I think it was there's so few people of color playing the game at young ages as well for us. Similar probably to the way maybe you had your cousin. I had my my brother as a way to kind of like look up and be like, make it feel normal. You know what I mean? That we can, that this is for us so that we can do it. And at such a young age when you maybe don't see race as much or perhaps appreciate the differences of perspectives, having kind of like that older sibling or relative to sort of look up to was definitely an in for me as well. You mentioned the podcast that you're on, Soul on Ice, with Kwame and Akil. I've talked a little bit to Akil. I actually if you're in Niagara, you would know Nick Hornby as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So he was one of our assistant equipment managers with when I played with the Toronto Marlies. So after Akil's big time goal last year in the World Juniors, I had to reach out. He's still holding it for me. He's got a signed jersey for me, but I haven't had a chance to see him, obviously, because of the pandemic. Yeah. So, I'm assuming he still has it for me. But so I had a couple of chats or just a couple back and forth texts with Akil, and obviously I know Kwame, but that's that's awesome. That podcast, the awareness of it, just like having three brothers talking hockey on a podcast is foreign for a lot of people, maybe not for us, but it's foreign for a lot of people. And it's on an NHL platform. I mean, what does that mean for you to be a part of that, especially at a young age? Like you and Akil are both just exiting juniors and you already have your voices are being streamed on NHL platforms and they're Black voices about hockey. I mean, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, well, at first, like when we first started off, we weren't really thinking to take it that far. We were just like, maybe this is a way to interact with our fans in Niagara or some other people around. And as it started to get bigger, we started to realize the importance of it and how much this is affecting people. And like speaking for myself, probably for you too, like growing up, we didn't see that anywhere. Like Black voices coming together, talking about their experiences and what it's like. So maybe we're inspiring some kids to play hockey or some kid to stay in hockey. I mean, as sad as it is, there's still kids out there getting bullied and facing racism. And, you know, there could be some kids that are going to quit hockey because of that. And it's sad that in 2021, that's still a reality. So to be able to come together and use our voice, especially on the national level, and have the league supporting us, it's pretty big for us.
Absolutely. I think you're totally right in what you're saying. That it's, you know, it's kind of crazy 2021 that there's young Black kids playing hockey, even in the GTA, that are quitting because of what the hockey culture or how the hockey culture treats them. And we
had a dad reach out and ask if we can talk to his kid because someone called him the N-word on the ice and he felt really uncomfortable, didn't want to play anymore.
Exactly.
And it's like, how is that still happening?
And unfortunately it is. And I mean, I'm still not even confident saying that it's going to stop. I think there's a lot more awareness built around it right now. And your podcast is a perfect example of that. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't have an opportunity to listen to, believe me, if I was a kid, if I was, 10, 12 years old, I'd be listening to a couple OHL brothers playing along with a Black filmmaker who's made a hockey documentary, I would 100% be tuning into
Yeah.
that. Because when I was a kid playing, I don't know if you did this, but I mean, what's the first year? I'm going to date myself here, but probably I think like NHL 96, maybe NHL 97 with Sega Genesis. It's like the first time you could, at least I could like make myself. Maybe it was 95, 96. And I created myself, but like I would start to make a team where I would start to trade. This was late 90s. I started to do this trade for all the brothers I knew in the league. And I
Oh,
would,
I still do that right now. I
right.
got my team with like Simmons.
Yeah,
Even
you
though
load
my
them
rating's
all.
pretty low, I put myself on there.
Exactly.
Akil, Stewart, both the Stewart brothers.
Both ways, exactly. So
So,
so that's funny you say that because I do the exact same thing. But I think that speaks to again the testament of what you're doing with your podcast. Like it 100% resonates with young Black youth and young youth of color who are getting interested into hockey to be able to look up and see themselves represented and to
mhm,
have that physical manifestation of actually, you know, the like for me it was the Jerome McGinley's and Anson Carter's and Mike Greer's and Peter. I was like just Jean-Luc Grandpierre. I didn't care if you were only played like I found you. I went through rosters and went through everyone's like
yeah.
profile picture to make sure like I'm not missing anyone because there might be someone I don't know.
Mhm,
Well, that's dope, man. I like that because I did that as a kid. So I'm most certainly, and clearly you did too. You still do. So 100%, man. Kids are going to do that, and it really means something. It doesn't mean matter if you're Black, Russian, Jewish, like whatever it is that might make you different or make you unique. You're going to relate to your own kind. Again, whether
mhm,
that's race, ethnicity, religion, nationality. So to be able to have more representation is huge because I ended up making it, and a lot of my love and passion and hunger to kind of pursue this life came from seeing dudes who look like me also doing it. You know, that made it feel like it was something I could achieve as well. I'm part white as well, so I'm very connected to that side of my family. But you know, I know what it's like walking around and being looked at and treated and talked to differently. So it's nice to be able to know like there's others that like you can relate to. Okay, well, I got a couple more, some more questions. Like in your junior days, just playing whatever. Where'd you grow up playing? Were you in the Toronto area?
yeah, I was in Toronto area.
Okay, so I'm in Ottawa. When or presumably you have because I don't think there's a Black hockey player of color who hasn't experienced this. But have you ever, and if so, when was your first experience dealing with racism in hockey?
Well, the first time I think honestly for any Black player is like when you're old enough when you walk in that room and like not people don't try to stare at you, but when you're the only Black guy there, people stare at you. It's inevitable. So right there, it's a feeling that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Um, but in terms of like actually playing, I remember one time we were playing in the States, and it was I was on the Marlies at the time, and it was a tournament between like some of the top teams in Canada, some of the top teams in the US, and um, I was just playing. I wasn't doing anything. I'm not much of a chirper unless I need to be, but
Me
that
neither.
game I was just playing, and there was kind of like a scruffle after the whistle, and I pushed the guy, and then he called me the N word, and it kind of like I just like froze for a second. I didn't really know what to do,
Mhm.
and then I just kept thinking that whole game. I was playing forward that game, but I kept thinking just like go score a goal, go score a goal, and I ended up scoring. But it was just for me, it was like instead of like slashing him and getting kicked out of the game, it was like if I do that, like I'm letting him win. Let me just go score and try and win the game. So that was the first time I really dealt with it. But
Mhm.
yeah, it didn't make me necessarily want to be violent. I just wanted like my parents have always said like be the bigger person. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to go out, be the bigger person, let him deal with his own ignorance.
That's actually wild to me that that was your reaction because for one, so like how old would you have been? Like 14 or something?
I was 12 or 13.
12, 13, so even younger. What's wild to me there is that that type of a response shows a lot of maturity into like not. it's so, I mean, just in hockey in general, it's so easy to retaliate, right? And like, no
Yeah,
matter
you're
what,
allowed to. So
exactly. It doesn't have to be, an N bomb that's being dropped for me to retaliate to
yeah.
somebody, but have it being that circumstance and having you still be like, what is going to be a better response? What is going to show that person that I actually do belong? What's going to stick it to him and his ignorance more than me punching him in the face or getting a penalty or, making a scene out of this? It's scoring that goal. And that to me is so powerful because a lot of people and a lot of players don't understand exactly what you would have gone through right there. This isn't a chirp about, your skating stride, about the stick you're using, about whatever, about you getting rocked last shift. It's about something that you actually physically, it's an intrinsic factor. You actually can't change this detail about you, but that's why they're choosing, or this individual is choosing to chirp you. But then your response to not get heated and to take that as I'm not going to let that win. I'm not going to let that deter me. I'm going to prove in fact that I'm better than this guy, and I'm going to show it on the score sheet or the scoreboard. Those are the types of moments of resiliency and strength that athletes like Jackie Robinson and Willie O'Ree, had to show. So not just those pioneers, but so many Black athletes before our time would have had to endure, and they simply can't take the same type of aggressive response because it'll in fact only hurt them or end them down the road. And that's something this is what I love about Black hockey players or hockey players of colors perspectives coming out, is allowing, I think, the voice to be heard that these experiences really aren't paralleled to a lot of people who don't look like us in our sport.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't understand that it's so easy to be chirped for something and then you punch or slash that person, you get a penalty, and then it's kind of settled afterwards, or maybe the parents get wind of it afterwards and something happens. But in the mature response that you took was deeper than just initial aggression. And that's on a human level, because emotions pop off and it's really easy to react in like a physical way. But to have to silently endure that and to choose to make your response be more impactful in a manner that's like, no, bro, you're not letting me feel uncomfortable or unwanted here. I'm in fact going to show you, I'm going to make this a lasting memory for you.
Yeah.
Not the guy you just called an N-word, just now put one up on the scoreboard against you. That individual 100% is going to remember that. Those are those moments that in sports and in our sport that we have, I commend you, bro. Like 12 years old, like having to respond like that. I don't even know if I would have been able to do that, for one. And I certainly know a lot of our peers not only would never have that understanding, but be able to actually react that way. And in turn, making that a victory for you instead of perhaps a victory for the opponent. So I commend you for that, because that's an incredibly mature response.
Thank you.
If that's your parents who put that on your ear, man, then kudos to them as well, because that's it's just so easy for being a victim of racism for myself. It's just so easy you easily get so angered. I was asked this summer after I wrote an article in the Players Tribune, which was post George Floyd's murder, and it was called "Silence is Violence," and it was kind of just calling out advocacy from from the majority population, from our white allies and friends and teammates and fans and everyone else, that to truly understand and hear these cries. If it's getting as bad as it is now, where cities are burning, maybe don't think like, oh, these this group of people is out of their mind. But no, think of what type of pain you must be going through if your cry for help is to react like that. It means that there's been centuries and decades and generations of this type of an emotion, but it never actually being understood, or else we would have dealt with this a long, long time ago in a much.
We tried to when Colin Kaepernick took a knee.
There's so many
ways. And you can look back in history at all the different ways that people have tried.
Absolutely. Exactly. There's the Civil War was fought, the Civil Rights Movement with MLK and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey before their times. And there's 80s riots, 90s riots. Like it's not a new thing, but anyways, in that manner of what post the article, I was doing some TSN interviews, and I was being asked, like, what does it feel like when you're a victim of a racial epithet or racial slur? And it was kind of hard to articulate because, in my opinion, it's really like a minimum of 5 different emotions, like immediately. It's anger, but it's also like sadness, it's defeat, it's a pain that you can't, it's like a stab wound, but you don't understand why that person did it, because it's because of a factor you actually just cannot change about yourself. So it actually merits no value on the type of person you are, because it's really just because of my pigmentation. I'm going to be called this nasty, like purely hateful word, or have this joke be made in my direction, or something thrown at me because I'm the big black guy at the bar who's clearly standing out. Like, these things happen in my career so often, and it really is hard to try to articulate it. But back again to like your ability to handle it so maturely, is people don't really understand the deep rooted pain that just comes from someone blasting you or throwing hate your way without you actually doing anything to merit it. And then just expecting you to like go about your business like you're unfazed. It's a really hard thing to be able to manage and juggle those emotions, but it's something that every black hockey player from the Negro League over 120 plus years ago to today are still dealing with. Did you ever what was your experience like? Let's just talk about Kitch for a second, but like, what was your experience like, the good or the bad? I want to hear like the good side, because you said, Kitch, you liked being in Kitchener, as did I. I thought it was one of the best junior teams or organizations in the country. But some good, and at the same time, did you ever at that level of hockey experience anything racially as well?
Yeah, so right away in Kitch, I got drafted there. Troy Smith was the coach when I got drafted, and then right after that, like before I even played for Troy, he was fired and Mike Van Ryn took over. I don't know if you know Rhino, but he's one of my favorite coaches I've ever had, and right away he made me feel like really comfortable. I roomed with Frank Hora for a little bit, and don't know if you know Frank, but he's a good veteran, and right away they just made me feel comfortable there.
Nice.
There was a couple times where, when guys maybe say or do like borderline racist things, but they don't really know it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a couple times with that, but I actually did have one of the guys message me this past year saying, "Hey, I don't know if I ever made you feel uncomfortable or whatever, but I'm sorry." And for me, that meant the world. I think being able to recognize a mistake or somewhere where you weren't necessarily being the way you should be, and being able to take ownership of that meant a lot. But no, I made a lot of good friends in Kitchener's. I loved it there. My first year was great. I had a real good rookie year, played a lot. And then my second year, I just, second year going into your draft year, you're expecting to play a ton, especially after having a good year.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, things kind of just went downhill. I wasn't playing a lot. I couldn't really understand why. I was told I needed to work on my defensive side of the game. So I worked on that and still wasn't playing. And for a bit of time, I started to become like a bad teammate in a way, which I never really had happen in my life. And it wasn't until after that season where I was able to take a step back and kind of realize that no matter what happened, I should have been a good teammate. I should have been being a good person. And I wasn't going out there and like being the worst guy to be around. I just wasn't being myself. And I've always tried to look at myself as a leader, and I just wasn't being that. So first year in Kitchener was great. Second year was a little bit up and down, but that second year honestly was probably the most impactful the year that benefited me the most.
Right.
Was that second year in Kitchener, because it taught me so much about myself, about life, just a lot of different things.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, to me, that like the being you saying you were being a great teammate, like I'm sure it wasn't so much that you weren't being a great teammate. It's just your standard of what you normally are for a leader and as a teammate is when things, and this is another thing that outsiders like struggle, and they'll never really understand. Anyone who hasn't played that elite level sport or that competitive sport where like so much, like you said, it's your draft year, right? Like so much is on the table. It's the mental side when things aren't going well in your own personal performance and how you mentally how you mentally react to that. And it's not always in your control, right? We often, like, one thing I had to learn in my career was constantly telling myself, and this came from being with the Devils and being with Lou Lamoriello, because he controls everything and you control very little. But it's reminding yourself, like, you can't trip out, you can't stress about what you can't control. And again, it's easier said than done, but learning that early on helped me out a lot, because then you can just focus on doing you. But it sounds like for me, it's not that you became a bad teammate, but more so we're just, when there's high stakes, man, and if things aren't going well for you and there's a lot on the table and this could be your livelihood, and all of a sudden for no real unexplainable reason, your minutes are being reduced and your opportunities being shortened, it's hard to like show up and be like your normal, joyful, smiley, personable self.
Yeah.
You don't want to put your own personal, especially the team's doing well. Like I would never want to bring, trust me, this happened a lot to me in my career. I was a 6th, 7th defenseman a lot in the NHL. So there's lots of healthy scratches. You're doing well, all of a sudden, boom, you're out of the lineup. No real explanation, right? And you'd always try to not put your own issues like above like the team. Like you don't want to bring your maybe negative attitude into the locker room where that's like buzzing and flying and the boys are winning. At the same time, like that's hard because you're all of a sudden creating, like there's a distance that's creating. We'd go on the road and I'd go to dinner sometimes solo, like by myself, just because I was like, I can't be around these dudes right now because they're just on a level that I feel so disassociated with. And so it's challenging. But again, I'm sure you were.
Yeah, more just what you said.
You're still like being a great dude. You just were in your head a little bit, you know?
Yeah, more in my head. But I want to talk about your time in Kitch. I mean, I think we were 10 years apart.
Okay.
You were a captain there for a little bit, so I want to know what it was like for you there.
Yeah, I got there. So I got there late. My story was the short version of it was I was playing tier 2 juniors in Ottawa here. I was 1 year removed from high school and was going part-time to Carleton University because I always wanted to go NCAA. That was kind of my path. This was like the 2004-05 season, and things with my junior team just kind of collapsed. Our GM just sort of mid-game got into a beef with the owner, got fired on the spot. The coaches found out after the game, they all quit. And these guys were like all really good hockey minds. Thankfully, one of the coaches in Kitchen at the time, Freddie Parker, was used to coach with these guys here in Ottawa. So they had reached out. They said, look, this team's just kind of falling apart out of nowhere. There's maybe 1 or 2 guys on this team who have a chance to go somewhere. I think you should reach out and try to grab this kid. So I was still kind of like school bound. They called me. They said, or my coaches called me and said, you really got to hear these guys out. I was a 12th round draft to the Barrie Colts. So like I was never really considering the OHL. And at the time it was Peter DeBoer was coaching and GM and Steve Spott, who's now with them in Vegas. He and Freddie Parker came down to find me. They met with me and my dad. I remember I skipped school and like I skipped the class, I think on Thursday or something. I went to the Westin for brunch with the 2 assistant coaches from the Rangers. And they basically laid it out for me. Like, it's a lockout season right now. Junior hockey is like all the buzz. We're not that far from Toronto. So we get like 20 something NHL scouts a game. And that's all I needed to hear. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more scouts that are coming into the Earl Armstrong Arena in Gloucester, Ottawa, you know? So anyways, just like that, that was a Thursday. They kind of rolled out like what they could do for me with an academic package. I still went to Waterloo when I was in Kitchener, University of Waterloo. And so they just kind of convinced me right there. I signed up, played my last game of tier 2 juniors with the boys that Thursday night, told them I was bouncing. By Saturday, me and my old man drove to St. Mike's. We met the team. Mike Richards was the captain, David Clarkson, Andre Benoit, but Boris Volabik, Matt Lashoff, all these NHL drafted players were on the team, and met them, dressed my first game, and bust back to Kitch afterwards and met my billet. So like it just like happened.
All happened real
Thursday,
quick, yeah.
Thursday I met the coaches. Saturday I signed a contract and was on the team playing my first game. Fast forwarding to the end of that season, We had an incredible team, incredible season. That was when London Knights were like OGs of all of Canadian junior hockey that year.
So pretty much every year.
Yeah, well, it's kind of
Yeah.
like 1-2, yeah, with the
Yeah.
Rangers and London, but they had like Corey Perry, Robbie Schremp, Mark
Yeah,
McCall,
that team that was crazy. I
Girardi,
remember
like
that.
so many guys who have gone long, long years in the NHL. David Bolin, Kostitsin, like all these dudes. And anyways, we lost to them in the conference finals, but I ended up getting drafted third round that year to Jersey, so it couldn't have worked out better. From there, the next year I was named captain. So I played less than a year, and then DeBoer gave me the C, which was a huge honor. I took some flack from the Kitchener fans back then because I was a very defensive defenseman, and like I didn't score a goal the whole year. And you know, when that's the case, people don't see like everything you do as a leader off the ice, in the locker room, or for the guys. They have no idea. It's more of like, this guy's not putting up points. How is he our captain? He doesn't win us games. How is he our captain?
It's not till you play the game and realize that guy's
Exactly.
blocking 5-6 shots a game and doing
Well,
all the little things.
precisely. Yeah. Like my first like game puck when I was a captain, I remember, was against the Kingston Frontenacs in Kitch. And we came back, but I fought twice that game. And one of them was actually against Chris Stewart. For some reason,
How'd that go?
it was good. We fought again years later, actually, in the NHL. A couple of days after I fought Simmons. So we actually were chatting the second time around. He's like, I saw you had a good one with Simmer. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And sure enough, this score was, we were leading. So he asked me for a go. Man, he's just such a big dude. Like we're kind of the same height, or like around, like I'm 6'3", he's probably around the same size, but like such a big lad. And he's one of those Scarborough boys, you know, so he's been rumbling like back. Stu's been rumbling since he was like 8 years old, beating up 13-year-old guys, you know. But no, I just remember him being so strong. And I think both Stewart brothers were capable of throwing left too. I don't know if they're predominantly left, so I had to be prepared. But point is, yeah, like I loved it, man. Kitch was great. I started vibing. I had the responsibilities of the captain, which they did kind of wear on me my second year, because I felt like a lot of that outside pressure of being like, you know, criticized for not being the prototypical junior captain, maybe. But nevertheless, I just love my time. The city was great. Again, I went to Waterloo, which is dope. I got drafted from there largely because I played there. So I'm forever grateful to Kitchener. My billets, I had two different billets, but both families were great to me.
Who are your billets? Are they still?
I had the Finlaysons the first year. I don't know if they still do it. They were with before me. They had Derek Roy.
The name sounds really familiar, actually.
And then similar area, end of town, the Martins. The Martins, they're still billeting. They had Dave Clarkson and Adam Keefe. Then it was me and Dan Turple, Kevin Henderson, and Matt Halischuk. I'm not sure who would have been around your age. They had Skinner. I don't know if you know wherever Jeff Skinner lived.
No.
But it was I think I'm trying to remember. I think it was off Fisher Hallman. I haven't thought of that name for a while, but I'm pretty sure that's an exit in Kitchener on the highway.
Okay, I probably know who they are if I saw
I'm sure
them.
you were. They were teachers, but anyways, they were awesome as well. But anyways, no, yeah, Kitchener for me was great. But there's one, like, I was gonna ask you, like, again, if any racial experiences or instances you had at juniors, and I had one. I'm sure this has happened to like all of us as Black hockey players. But you know, where you get the fans and someone tells you stick to playing basketball, which is just like such a low hanging fruit, typical thing to say to a Black guy, right? Stick to playing basketball. Even when people look at me in the elevator or something, because they say I'm 6'3", and they're like, you must play basketball. And that doesn't offend me, because to them, I'm just a big Black guy, I guess. But in my mind, I'm like, I'd be small in basketball. And actually, no, I'm Canadian and I play hockey, and I'm very like happy and proud that I play hockey. But it's just never this expected. But we were in Erie, and same exact thing that happened to Devontae Smith-Pelly when he was with Washington in Chicago. And it was just I don't know if the dude's still there, but the guy who sat beside the penalty box in Erie was just kind of a redneck chirper.
Yeah, he's still there, actually. I know exactly what you're talking about.
All I remember is he'd have like a white Budweiser jersey on, but the jersey like wasn't white anymore. It was like so dirty and like really needed to be washed. But that type of dude. And anyways, yeah, he was giving me the gears one game. I was probably in there a couple times. And then he just started hitting me with the basketball bombs and like, stick to playing basketball. What are you doing out here? Blah, blah, you're a joke, all this type of stuff. And I started scoring. There's like this much crack between like the glass. Like I couldn't get him, obviously, but I was squirting water at him, which created a scene, just like when Devo stood up and it created a scene. And security did end up bouncing him. And then I think my coaches told me afterwards that there was, I can't remember what time of year, it might have been towards the end of the season, but they like banned him for the remainder of the regular season games, which is probably like 4 to 5-ish games. But that I remember, like, that was one of my most blatant ones, like in public, especially from a fan that I experienced. And I would have been, I guess, 18 at the time. My earlier ones were like 14, and unfortunately continued to happen until I was 30. But that was one of the few I can say, though, that I remember from my like OHL days. For the most part, my experiences were all fairly good, and definitely like my experiences within Kitchener were all enjoyable. The organization was just, I used to call it was like a junior like NHL team is how it felt. Like the city was awesome. The kind of community board of owners was great and gave us lots of leash, and our facilities were dope. The fans were great. The team was always amazing. I was very grateful and fortunate and happy to be playing in Kitch. One thing I want to ask you about, because you would have played with Akil in Niagara, right?
Yep. We played 3 years together, or 2.5.
So as a black hockey player, and like you said, it might not be like, well, it's not necessarily racist by any means, but when you walk into a locker room, you know what it's like to feel eyes on you in a way that like you don't you feel like I'm more people are looking at me in a way that they don't normally stare, right? So when you're in a locker room, I've had a couple times in my career in New Jersey to play with other black hockey players. What does that mean for you? Again, kind of like what we were saying earlier, when you have that, again, when I said you're Russian or Jewish, but when you gravitate in any office, in any work environment, you gravitate to those that are like-minded or that are like you. That's so seldomly experienced in hockey for us, but I had that experience with New Jersey, with Johnny O'D and Bryce Salvador and Kevin Weeks and Jean Grandpierre. What was that like for you? Because we're very comfortable in the hockey locker room anyways. We're going to make friends with all of our white teammates. Like, that's not the issue. But it is kind of a comfort or like a slice of home when you can talk about music, food, culture with someone who actually does get you, and you don't have to maybe be afraid of being seen as culturally misunderstood. And I say that meaning like I would have to censor myself a lot of times in locker rooms. I'm a very nice guy. I'm as a leader, as a captain a lot. I would always hang me with I was just one of the dudes, but I'd have to take my earrings out if I was rolling into the room. You'd cover up any tattoos you'd have. Like, there was just a conception of that's not what we're about. And I felt like sometimes having another black teammate around gave me someone at times to lean on, whether it's the guy in the stands who's chirping you, a player on the ice calling you an N-word, someone just in passing when you stop to eat, who like a waitress who maybe says something weird to you, but you're kind of like, you only say that to me, but not to anyone else. What did you get from having Akil as a teammate?
Yeah, so for majority of my life, actually, my best friend, a black hockey player, had played on my team. So I was fortunate enough to have that up until I went to the Marlies, which
what's his name?
was
Let's give him a shout out. What's his name?
Dante Sheriff. He's at Mercyhurst right now. He's actually killing it out there. So
Nice.
Good for him. But up until I went to the Marlies, I've always had another black player on my team. And then the Marlies, I had Nick Price there. Sorry. But I had Nick Price with the Marlies, and then with Kitchener, I didn't have anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got traded to Niagara, right away I knew Akil was there, and it kind of it gives you that sense of like, okay, there's somebody like me there. Like, this is right away. It's, you don't even know him, but it's almost, you feel like there's somebody there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got to Niagara, I didn't really know anyone. I knew one guy who I played with on the Marlies, and Akil got called up to our team a little bit, so I knew him a little, but not really. But right away I wanted to just kind of keep quiet. I didn't want people to like judge me really quick. I wanted to keep quiet, get to know people, because like you said, all eyes are on you when you're
Yeah,
a black hockey player, whether you want them on you or not, whether people are thinking good things or bad things, the eyes are still on you. So I just wanted to make sure I made a good first impression. But having Akil there was pretty big for both of us, I would say, having someone to kind of just lean on.
hmm,
Um, our families even became close because in the rink, when you go to a game, there's a ton of white people, and when you see that other black family that you can relate to, it's pretty special. So for I
absolutely.
don't want to speak just for Akil, but we've talked about this a lot of how big it's been, and you know, we were each other's best friends on the team, so
Mhm.
that bond was pretty special, and it was there pretty quick because we were like each other, so we gravitated towards each other for that reason.
Absolutely, and that's it exactly. It would honestly be no different if there was a veteran Russian player on a team and then a new Russian draft pick came in, and just having that comfort of that, knowing that we're affiliated in the same time, we have a similar palette, whether that be for like food, for music, for culture, for clothes, the way we dress, the way we maybe speak, even. And you don't have to feel so distant. There's a lot of times for me in the locker room where me being the black guy on the team uh, was almost like it was almost a prop. It was like used as like a way for me to get in with people, but we had to kind of highlight it's like I'm doing something that the black guy would do, and
Yeah,
like that generates laughs, and that like haha, it's safe and friendly for us to now laugh and be friends with him. But it's like it couldn't just be like, hey man, what's up, I'm Mark. And
yeah,
then we
yeah,
almost had to like, I almost felt like at times me being a minority had to like be talked about for everyone else in the room to be like, okay, so like we can just be comfortable and normal with this dude
yeah.
instead of just like being comfortable and normal with the dude right from the get-go, sort of thing. Not to say that the guys wouldn't be, but it was weird for me. Like I don't know if you felt that, but I always almost felt like
Hmm.
being the black hockey player, I had to use my blackness to kind of break the ice to
Yeah,
then become one of the dudes, because I am the guy who wants to kind of like dance around and like mess around and just be me in the room. But
yeah.
if I kind of come in hot just doing that, then it's kind of like, whoa, we're not ready for that. But
Hmm.
if it's like pointed out, they're like, oh, he's the brother, he can do that. Then it almost like I almost needed to not get permission, but to like create this comfortable space for myself to actually be my normal me, because
Yeah.
just coming in being my normal self might be perceived as like, whoa man, we're not ready for that.
Hmm.
And that's a weird thing when you are the only black guy on a team or the only minority maybe on a team. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a hood, I'm not a gangster, I'm not trying to like come into a hockey locker room and like flip the script. I'm just legit
Yeah,
trying to be myself. And
yeah.
that's just a biracial dude from Ottawa who likes certain things on this side and likes certain things on that side. But it's one question I want to ask is looking at where hockey is now from our experiences from other, um, minorities and people of color in the game of hockey's experiences, with some of the pain points we still see today in the game, guys like Akeem Eliu have been vocal about it in the last year. HDA has been formed. Um, things that have just recently, even last year, happened to Keandre Miller with the New York Rangers on their podcast, an interview with him. What is something that you would want to see change or perhaps grow uh, as far as the minority experience goes in hockey?
Well, kind of what Kitch is working on here, and my mom has talked to me about this a lot, and we've gone back and forth. But I think racism, I don't think anybody is born racist. I don't believe in that.
I
I
agree.
think that comes from whether it's the parents or wherever it comes from somewhere. So I think like programs need to be put in place from a younger age, and people need to be like in it shouldn't be you get to the NHL and then you start working on how to deal with racism. It should start at the GTHL, it should start at the OHL. So I think if you there's no reason with the resources, with the money, the people around, that every single one of these teams have, that there shouldn't be programs in place to help spread awareness, to help people deal with these things. So I'd like to see from all levels, challenging all levels, GTHL, whether it's the youngest group, the oldest group, all OHL teams, to just start getting that awareness out and setting up a safe space for players to play.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's, first of all, yeah, this is amazing what Kitchener's doing. And before we hopped on the call, I was saying, like, I'm surprised when I found out, because I've been talking to a few of my former NHL teams about doing something similar to this, or just creating some type of initiative or diversity and inclusion positions in the club. To my knowledge, the LA Kings are the only one who has that on the NHL level. But I believe at the NHL at the top, obviously it can trickle down, but it shouldn't just be in the hands of, the top leagues. It should be, like you said, to the junior leagues, Hockey Canada, to USA Hockey, to the GTHL and other minor leagues. There's, a lot of Black representation in the GTHL, but there's also youth Black representation that's quitting hockey for what we mentioned earlier, not feeling like it's, at the end of the day, how many racial epithets can I actually tolerate before I just don't want to play this game anymore? And that's a shame, because for me, this is not a new issue. And sure, it's being highlighted more now, but because it's not a new issue, these things have been happening for a long time. And a lot of the people who have been running these, the leagues or the clubs, whatever it may be, they know about it. But racism for a lot of people is a hard thing to address and to deal with. But the unfortunate thing is, when you're not doing anything to properly address it, you're just continuing to enable it, and you're continuing to allow it to happen to the victims. And again, this is nothing new in our society, and it's certainly nothing new in the game or culture of hockey either, as we would both know. One of the things that I love is, again, in trying to create that advocacy, because it is an uncomfortable conversation, but it isn't always for the victim. We're the ones who are trying to talk about it and have our voices be heard. It's for the majority that is tough. So it's getting the old guard of hockey to come around, to start seeing the new way, to start understanding, to start wanting to tap into whole new resources and communities of support. Talking about the minority, like fanship, getting minorities more involved in the game, making them feel more comfortable in the game, growing awareness internally. It doesn't have to be an ugly or a messy or a tough conversation. If there is, like Kitchener is doing, creating a BIPOC program where they can train athletes and employees and billets and family members. We have to do it in the NHL level. We go through security training. We go through like media training. Why not do it on this level too? It doesn't make sense to me that you wouldn't tackle like something that's so significant and important on this level as well. So I agree with you there. That's the type of change I want to see, but it takes actual action. It's not about retweeting. It's not about posting something, it's not about a decal you put on your helmet for the month of February. It's about a constant push towards the growth of the game and the inclusion. If we want to actually say that this is Canada's game, and if we want to actually say that this is the best game in the world, when I walk out the streets in Canada, in my high school, in the malls, in stores, and downtown, whatever, I see a lot of multiculturalism. So we need to be able to embrace that, to actually make it our game, instead of just the majority game. One thing that you said with your teammate who reached out to you recently, who said, I hope I was never, said anything rude or mean or made you feel a certain way. And if I did, I'm sorry. One of the things, like in the past year, that have touched me the most are seeing white hockey players use their platform. Again, not just in a post or a one-off tweet, but in an actual well-constructed, articulate message that's challenging others to follow what they're doing. And that has honestly brought me to tears. It was Blake Wheeler, my former teammate Ben Scrivens, Connor Carrick, like watching some of these guys say what they said was kind of like, finally, someone who doesn't look like me but is exactly like me understands what it is we're talking about here. So these types of programs that the Kitchener is doing, I think are fantastic. And I'm sure, like you said, for you, it meant the world. And it means the world for me too, to know that we have allyship. We as boys in the locker room, we always have brothers in arms, right? That we'll go to war with. But outside of the game itself, we need to know that we have allies and partners who are not just going to thumb out a post or a tweet, but also get behind initiatives and be advocates and raise, like you said, racism's taught, teach their own household. The important thing about what Kitch is doing here with the Rangers are highlighting our perspectives, highlighting different perspectives. We need to be able to shine a light for our game to grow, different perspectives that are out there, so that a lot of my white peers or teammates, I don't necessarily even blame them that they've maybe felt or thought a certain way, because that's been their life experience. But you have to be able to take a step back and realize, oh, wow, not everyone had that same experience. And that's really unfortunate that their experiences have actually been a lot worse. That highlighting those different perspectives to me is what creates awareness and education, and then can start lead towards some more change. But yeah, again, man, this has been dope. I don't know if you have any other questions for me, man, but I'm good. But I've just been loving connecting with you. Like I said, I was on your podcast, but I didn't get a chance to actually connect earlier. So I'm happy we got to do it here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you quickly about you. You talked a little bit about the racism you dealt with when you were younger and the pressure of being like the captain in Kitchener. Just I want to know like a little bit about some of the racism you faced during your career, and then
for sure
your time in Toronto. I mean, everybody knows it's like probably the toughest market to play in. The fans, they'll love you and hate you in the snap of a finger. Kind of want to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so growing up as a kid, my first incident, I was like 13 or 14 years old, and being in Ottawa, I'm very close to the Quebec border, and it was in Buckingham, Quebec, only about, like maybe 25, maybe 30 minutes from where I grew up. So not far at all. And it was, there's a couple incidents, unfortunately, that eventually happened at that rink. But the first one when I was 14 was, I think I had a coincidental minor penalty with an opposing player. So we're both in our own penalty boxes. And there was these two older guys, gentlemen, presumably parents, leaning over the glass and just kind of berating me, chirping me, whatever. They probably didn't like that. Maybe I don't even know what I did. I probably maybe punched the kid in the head. Who knows? But they're giving it to me for that. And they started saying something, and I kind of was like, wait, what are they saying? And I listened, and they kept saying, like, go back to the bush. You don't belong here. Go back to the bush. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but told my dad, who was at the game, who's, again, a Jamaican immigrant, very much stood out in the Buckingham Arena. And I got around, I guess, to some of the parents afterwards, and I told them what they had said. And it had been interpreted as, you don't belong here was pretty obvious, but to go back to the bush, essentially them telling me, go back to Africa, kid. And I remember that creating a bit of our Francophone parents started like talking to their parents, starting to figure out like, who are these jerks basically? And this is completely inappropriate. And nothing really came of it as far as any, punishment, but it definitely became known, I remember, amongst the parents that like something racist just happened to one of our players. That was my first kind of intro to it. And I still don't really I just remember it happening, not really knowing how to feel, and kind of just standing back and almost learning how to feel based on like other parents' reactions to it, realizing like the severity of it based on how the adults are responding is kind of, again, teaches us, right? Like what's right and what's wrong comes from our elders. Mm-hmm. So that was one of my first incidences. Then of course the one in Erie with the guy beside the penalty box. I didn't have too many in youth. There's been a lot I've dealt with in the pros. Blatant racism, not always, but a lot of like unconscious bias or microaggressions. And what I mean, or examples of those are even in the NHL, having an assistant coach run a meeting. I don't remember what the purpose of him saying this was, but he was trying to paint the scene, I don't even know what. This guy was a little bit crazy, but he said, has anyone in this room ever been arrested or ever been in jail? And then to prove his point, he would just like casually look at me right over his shoulder. And now everyone kind of gets that like, ha token laugh. Yeah, if anyone in here got arrested, clearly it would be the black guy. This is an NHL locker room. My mom's an educator and my dad's a judge. My dad's a provincial court Ontario judge. So me being arrested as a hockey player wouldn't even be the worst thing, but me being arrested as a son of a judge would have been.
Yeah.
But like that didn't matter. It didn't matter that actually of anyone in this room who probably hasn't ever been arrested, it's probably the black guy. In turn, it was just like I'm making a joke about like anyone ever spent the night in jail, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Looks over at Fraser. And what do? I just have to do like the token, like, haha, yeah, probably would have been me. Laugh it off, get on with your point, move on. And that type of thing happened like almost daily. You know what I mean? So like that's just, and it's not some like it really does roll off the back. It wasn't something I ever lost sleep over. But now that I'm out of the game,
you can see it a lot more.
I see it, and I realize it was like, obviously sports, we don't have human resources in the locker room. Sports are a different culture completely. But in experiencing that and being outside of the game now, realizing like this isn't at all a normal experience for people. This is very much just something like black athletes in these types of, white cultures have to deal with.
Yeah.
So that is something I dealt with a lot and continuing at the NHL level, most definitely. Now, when it comes to Toronto, I loved it playing in Toronto and I was treated very well by the organization. My first year with Toronto was awesome. Fans love me. I was like very much a contributing part to why we made the playoffs for the first time in like 10 years. My second year in Toronto was like, get this guy out of here. He's brutally sucks. Like that's how I felt. It was like you said, the highs were high and the lows were low. And it's really hard mentally to try to find that balance as a player. Like you don't pay attention to the media. You don't watch TSN anymore. TSN obviously covers a lot of the leagues. But like if our team's losing, we don't put it on in the morning in the locker room because we don't want to have to we know why we're losing. We don't want to hear their opinion on why we're losing. But it really was it was a challenge. The second year, I came off a really bad injury. I shattered my skull taking a Milan Lucic slap shot to the face in playoffs. There's a famous picture. If you Google Mark Fraser CT scan, you'll see like the Terminator image of like a metallic skull with like a legit hole in my head. Full reconstructive surgery. Obviously, I wasn't wearing a visor. I come back the second game of the season. The next year, I tear my MCL. Wow. So I just was like low confidence and everything coming back from that. Still loved it there. Like still have a lot of friends in the staff. The training group was the equipment managers and trainers were amazing. The guys were great. It just was like that pressure then coming back in, not quite being yourself, being a little hesitant and tentative. Your leash is now shorter and no one's really considering that from the outside perspective. All they're doing is like, well, why isn't this guy the same as what he used to be?
Yeah, they don't care about that.
And it was I felt like I had a very short leash, an opportunity to kind of get back to my normal self before I was out the door and traded to Edmonton. And then, my journey just kind of continued from there. But personally, I loved it. Toronto was awesome. Again, being an Ontario boy, growing up playing for the Leafs, like the second I put that jersey on, I mean, I'd already played for the Devils for about 100 games at that point, but putting that jersey on was like, this is cool. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this is cool. The pictures in the hallways of Sittler and like the Clarks and the Gilmores. And like, I felt like I was becoming a part of history, being a part of that organization. And I was very, very proud to rep those colors and to rep that squad. It was my most enjoyable time in my career. Absolutely. Getting to Toronto is like, even going to the stick room, you're kind of like, hey, I need another stick. And they're like, oh, just go ahead. Like you got 20 right there.
It's like playing catch versus playing other places.
Yeah. And I was like, well, like, you mean we can just take whatever? Like normally, there's an inventory and a budget, like jerseys, like you can have sticks, of course, but like just ask first. So we know how many you're taking. Toronto was just like, help yourself. And I was like, this is what the NHL is like. Damn. So it was dope, man. I had a great time, but again, the classy, very classy organization. I love my time there. I just wish I could have lasted longer.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah. But anything else you got for me?
No, I think that's it.
Oh, but man, this has been honestly, man, this has been a privilege. I've really enjoyed doing this. Again, I'm really happy that the Rangers have done this. I think you and I are part of something cool, having being former Rangers alum. I'm really proud. I've always proud of being a Kitchener Ranger. I love my time there. I love the city. I love the people, the fans, all that. The boys were dope. But this is cool. We know what it's like in the hockey culture to not have this.
Yeah.
To have them creating a program, a BIPOC program, to be able to educate their athletes, their fans, their staff. I think that's dope. This is the type of growth we need to see, the change that we want to see down the road for minority involvement in hockey.
Yeah, for real. So it's I hope they keep this up, and I hope they have both of us back, whether it's together or separate, doing different things to help out. But
definitely, man, definitely. I'm down for the cause, so I'm eager to help for sure. All right. So anyone who does want to follow you or hear a little bit more about your journey and follow your journey, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I believe on Twitter it's just Elijah Roberts 98. Not really on Facebook, but on Instagram it's Elijah_Roberts 98. I'm always on my social media, so feel free to message me with any questions. If you're a young black hockey player who needs something to talk about, shoot me a message. If you're an old black hockey player, needs something to talk about, shoot me a message. Or just any hockey player who's got questions or something to talk about. I'm always open to talk about things.
I love that. And I got to look mine up here. But same as well. I'm on Facebook. Sorry, not on Facebook, but on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, my handle is Mark. Where am I here? Mark.Fraser.2, but it shouldn't be too hard. Mark.Fraser.2 on Insta. And my Twitter is @MarkFraser02. But yeah, I'm on same thing as Elijah. Happy to connect with anyone who's interested in connecting further or in checking out some of what I'm into. Also, very passionate about this and the whole diversity and inclusion space, especially as it pertains to the hockey community. So you can find out some of what I'm doing on those platforms. But again, thank you everyone for attending and checking the both of us out. The Kitchener Rangers Club 63 podcast. Really happy that we got to do this takeover. And like you said, Elijah, hopefully maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Dope. All right. Well, thanks, man. Again, pleasure chatting with you and best of luck with your upcoming season and just hockey endeavors.
Thank you.